You people always find a way to sneak in, don't you? The words cut through the marble lobby like a blade. The manager's voice was sharp, his anger deliberate. Before anyone could breathe, he lifted a glass of water and poured it over her face. The splash echoed under the chandelier. Every drop hit like proof of what he thought she was less than, unworthy, invisible. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here. Now, back to Maya Carter. She did not flinch, not once. Water streamed down her cheekbones, dripping onto the white marble floor, mixing with her silence. Around her, luxury-trembled bellboys froze. Guests whispered. A woman near the elevator raised her phone but hesitated. The manager straightened his tie, chest puffed, proud of what he had just done. "I told you to leave," he barked, his voice cracking into the air. "This hotel is for paying guests, not strays looking for a photo op." Maya's hands stayed folded across her chest, calm, controlled. Her voice was soft, but each word landed heavy. "Are you sure you want to finish that sentence?" He blinked, caught off guard by her tone. There was no shouting, no curse, no fear. Just that question, slow, deliberate, dangerous in its restraint. It made the room hold its breath. A young concierge whispered to a colleague, "She was just waiting for someone." Another muttered, "Greg went too far this time." But the manager, still blind with pride, waved them off. "Security's on the way. We don't tolerate imposters pretending to belong." Maya lowered her gaze for a second, the water still glistening on her skin like a crown she did not ask for. She remembered another lobby, another decade, another humiliation. But this time, she was not alone. Behind the glass doors, footsteps echoed, measured, heavy, steady. A man in a white suit entered the frame, his eyes locked on her. And in that moment, every person in the room felt it. The balance of power was about to change. The room went silent the moment he stepped through the glass doors. His shoes clicked against the marble like a metronome of authority. The man in the white suit did not need to raise his voice or flash a badge. His presence alone rearranged the air. Guests turned. Staff stiffened. The manager's arrogance wavered, but pride made him double down. "Sir, please step aside," the manager said, gesturing toward Maya with the same hand that had thrown the water. "This woman is trespassing. I have already called security." The man did not answer. He looked at Maya soaked, still, dignified. Then his gaze shifted to the trembling glass on the front desk, the puddle spreading across the polished floor, and finally to the manager's hand, still wet. His voice came low, almost quiet. "Did you just pour that on her?" The manager's jaw tightened. "I am protecting this establishment from fraud. People like her walk in pretending to be—" He stopped when the man stepped closer. "People like her?" The words rolled off his tongue like ice cracking. The pause that followed was unbearable. Even the chandeliers seemed to hum with discomfort. A bellboy near the entrance whispered, "That is Mr. Carter." The whisper spread like a spark in dry air. Another staff member gasped softly. The name carried weight, the kind of weight that builds skyscrapers and signs paychecks. Maya stayed quiet, watching the shift unfold. Her silence was no longer submission, it was strategy. The manager, still unaware of who stood before him, crossed his arms. "I do not care who you are, sir. This hotel has standards." Mr. Carter smiled faintly, but it was not kindness. "Yes," he said, "and right now you are below them." He pulled out his phone, spoke clearly into the receiver. "Human resources. Meet me in the main lobby. Bring corporate security and the general counsel. Effective immediately." Whispers rose again, like the tide against stone. Guests leaned from the balcony, sensing the unraveling. One older couple near the elevator clutched each other's hands. A young woman recording on her phone whispered, "He is not security. He owns this place." The manager froze mid-breath. "You are joking," he said, voice trembling. Maya finally spoke. Her tone was steady, almost gentle. "You threw water at the owner's wife. I would start thinking about how to apologize, not how to talk." The words landed like judgment. Cameras clicked. Someone gasped audibly. The man in the white suit looked around the room and then back at the manager. "You are finished here," he said simply. And though he did not shout, the entire lobby heard it. Every chandelier, every whisper, every heart beating behind that silence understood. Power had changed hands. Justice had entered the room, and it did not need to make noise to be seen. The lobby felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were shrinking to make room for the truth. The once proud manager stood rigid, the color draining from his face. His voice faltered, barely holding on to the last shred of his authority. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered. "I was only doing my job." Mr. Carter's tone did not rise. It did not need to. "Your job," he said, "was to make guests feel welcome. You chose to humiliate one instead." He took a step closer, each movement deliberate, precise. "Do you understand the difference between service and superiority?" The manager swallowed hard. "Sir, I had no idea who she was." "That is exactly the problem," Mr. Carter replied. "You only respect people when you know their title." Gasps rippled across the lobby. A young staff member behind the desk lowered her eyes, shame flooding her expression. Maya stood motionless beside her husband, water still tracing faint lines down her arms. The air carried the scent of luxury mixed with guilt. A man near the concierge desk whispered, "He said she was trespassing." Another added, "Now he is the one about to be escorted out." The murmur grew, soft but steady, a current of collective judgment that no one dared to stop. Mr. Carter's phone buzzed. He answered without breaking eye contact. "Proceed," he said simply. On the other end, a calm voice replied, "Human resources and legal are on their way down. The termination documents are ready for signature." The manager's hands began to tremble. "Please, sir, I made a mistake." Maya looked at him for the first time. Her voice was quiet, almost kind. "You made a choice. You looked at me and decided what I was worth before I said a single word." He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She continued, "And you called that professionalism?" Her words sliced deeper than any reprimand. The staff exchanged uneasy glances, torn between pity and justice. Mr. Carter turned to the gathered employees. "Let this be clear," he said. "We do not build a brand on marble floors and golden logos. We build it on respect. And the moment that is gone, so is your position here." He looked back at the manager. "Hand over your badge." The manager hesitated, but under the weight of silence, he reached for his lapel. The metallic click of the name tag echoed like a gavel. He placed it on the counter, his fingers shaking. As he stepped back, the security team arrived, dressed in black suits, moving with quiet authority. One of them nodded to Mr. Carter, waiting for confirmation. "Escort him out," Mr. Carter said softly. The staff watched as the man who once commanded the room now walked through the same doors he had guarded so proudly. Maya's gaze followed him, not with triumph, but with clarity. When the doors closed behind him, she turned to her husband and whispered, "Justice does not need to shout. It just needs to stand." And in that stillness, surrounded by chandeliers and silence, the lobby finally felt clean again. For a long moment, no one moved. The sound of the closing doors lingered like a final breath. The marble floor, polished to perfection, reflected a scene that had already become legend: the soaked woman who never shouted, and the man who ended a career with a single sentence. Mr. Carter turned to the staff, his expression calm but unyielding. "Every person in this building represents more than a paycheck," he said. "You represent what this company stands for when no one is watching." His voice did not carry anger, only weight. "If you cannot serve with dignity, you will not serve here at all." The young concierge, the one who had whispered earlier, stepped forward. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. "Sir, I tried to stop him," she said. "I told him she had a reservation." Maya looked at her, eyes softening. "And that is why you will go far," she replied. The young woman's shoulders dropped in relief, her lips parting into the smallest, most grateful smile. Across the room, a guest who had been filming lowered his phone. His voice broke the quiet. "Sir, ma'am," he said, "I just want to say, what happened here, it was wrong, and I am glad people saw it." Mr. Carter nodded once. "They needed to," he said, "because injustice hides best in comfort. And this place has been too comfortable for too long." He turned back to his wife. Her blouse was still damp, her hair clinging to her skin, yet she looked untouchable. The water that once humiliated her now shimmered under the chandelier like proof of grace. "Would you like to go upstairs?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "Not yet." She looked around the lobby, the reception desk, the silent employees, the guests pretending not to stare. "I want them to remember this moment, not because it was dramatic, but because it was necessary." Human resources and legal arrived moments later. Their heels and shoes clicked in rhythm, the sound of procedure meeting justice. The head of HR, a composed woman in her 50s, approached with a folder in hand. "Mr. Carter, the termination documents have been processed," she said. "The manager's access has been revoked. His record has been forwarded to compliance." Maya exhaled slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. That was fast. Mr. Carter's reply was simple. "Speed is what bias never expects." The HR director turned to Maya. "Mrs. Carter, we sincerely apologize for what happened. It will not be forgotten or buried." Maya nodded. "Do not bury it," she said. "Learn from it." A murmur of agreement rose among the staff, tentative but real. For the first time that afternoon, the lobby did not feel like a battlefield. It felt like a classroom. The lesson was painful, but it was permanent. As Mr. Carter placed a gentle hand on his wife's back, they began to walk toward the elevators. The crowd silently parted. No applause, no cheers, just respect. And when the elevator doors closed, the reflection of their figures remained on the marble, two silhouettes carved into the memory of a place that would never see itself the same way again. The elevator doors slid open on the top floor, revealing a hallway lined with gold-trimmed mirrors and silence. The shift from chaos to calm was almost unreal. Maya walked ahead slowly, her heels leaving soft echoes on the carpet. She was still damp, but the water had dried into symbols of defiance, tiny marks of what she had endured and what she had reclaimed. Inside the executive suite, sunlight spilled through the tall windows, washing everything in pale gold. Mr. Carter removed his jacket and draped it over a chair, his jaw tight but his movements measured. He had seen corporate crises before, but this one carried something heavier, personal betrayal dressed as professionalism. Maya stood near the window, watching the city hum below. "It never really ends, does it?" she said quietly. "No matter how high we climb, someone still thinks we are trespassing." He joined her by the glass. "That is why we keep building," he said. "Every time they push us out of a room, we buy the floor." She smiled faintly, but there was no victory in it, only truth. "I did not even raise my voice," she said, half to herself. "And yet the whole room heard me." That," he replied, "is what real power sounds like." There was a pause. The weight of the moment sat between them, heavy but cleansing. Maya turned and looked at him fully. "You did not have to come down there," she said. He met her gaze. "Yes, I did. I needed them to see that disrespect has consequences, not meetings." She exhaled, letting the tension slide away. The sound of her breathing filled the quiet room. Down below, the city carried on, unaware that a reckoning had just happened several floors beneath its skyline. A knock came at the door. It was the young concierge, the same one who had spoken up earlier. She stood nervously, clutching a small folder. "I am sorry to disturb you, Mrs. Carter, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice wavering. "I just wanted to return this." She held out Maya's room key, the one she never got to use. Maya took it gently. "Thank you," she said, "and thank you for speaking when no one else did." The young woman hesitated. "It was the right thing to do," she said softly. "But honestly, I was scared." Maya nodded. "Courage is not loud," she said. "It is just choosing not to stay silent." The girl's eyes glistened. She whispered, "Everyone downstairs is still talking about you." Mr. Carter smiled faintly. "Good. Let them talk about respect for once." The concierge left, and the room settled again. The city lights flickered on one by one as dusk approached. Maya leaned against the glass, watching her reflection fade into the skyline. "When they look at us," she said, "they see color before they see character." "And yet," her husband replied, "our character always changes their color." The sun slipped lower, painting the sky with shades of amber and indigo. It was quiet, not the kind of quiet that follows fear, but the kind that follows justice. Maya closed her eyes and whispered, "Let this be the last time I am tested in my own home." Her husband's voice was steady beside her. "Then we make sure it is." And as night embraced the city, the hotel that had witnessed humiliation also learned reverence. It was no longer just a building. It was now a lesson carved in marble. The next morning, sunlight poured into the lobby through the tall glass doors. The same marble floor that had once echoed with shouting now reflected calm. But beneath that calm, something had shifted. Employees stood straighter, voices lowered, eyes alert. The humiliation that had unfolded there had become more than gossip. It had become a warning, a quiet code of accountability. Maya and Mr. Carter stepped out of the elevator together, both composed and deliberate. The hotel staff parted as they walked past, not out of fear but recognition. Respect had returned to the building, not as a rule, but as a reminder. The young concierge approached them again, holding a small notepad. "Mrs. Carter," she said shyly, "the guests from last night asked if you were all right. Some of them stayed to file statements." Maya smiled, the kind that reached her eyes. "That means they saw more than just an argument," she said. "They saw a lesson." The concierge nodded, her expression bright with pride. "They did, ma'am, and they said it made them think." Mr. Carter glanced toward the front desk where a temporary manager now stood, reviewing documents with human resources. "Good," he said. "Thinking is how change begins." The atmosphere had transformed. What had once been polished indifference was now genuine attentiveness. Guests were greeted with warmth, not suspicion. Even the scent in the air, fresh linen and citrus, felt lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled. Near the entrance, a group of housekeepers paused as the Carters passed. One of them, an older woman with silver hair and gentle eyes, spoke softly. "Ma'am," she said, "what you did yesterday, you made us feel seen." Maya stopped. Her voice softened. "You were always seen," she said. "They just forgot to look." The woman's eyes shimmered. Not anymore. They walked on, through the same doors where arrogance had once stood. Outside, the city was alive, buses rumbling, car horns cutting through morning air, people rushing to their lives. Yet in that corner of downtown, time seemed to slow, just enough for reflection. Mr. Carter looked at his wife, his tone quiet but firm. "You know this will reach the press. Someone recorded everything." "I know," she replied. "Let them show it. Maybe someone who looks like me will watch it and remember to keep standing." He nodded. "And maybe someone who looks like him will think twice before deciding who belongs." They paused at the valet line. The driver, a young man who had seen everything the day before, handed them their keys with both hands. "Sir, ma'am," he said respectfully, "it is an honor to have you here." Maya met his eyes. "The honor," she said, "is when people treat each other like humans. Keep doing that." As the car pulled away, the hotel behind them glowed in the morning light. Through its windows, staff moved with renewed purpose. Guests smiled back, and silence carried a different weight, not fear, not shame, but understanding. Inside that silence was the echo of one woman's calm and one man's authority, woven into a message that would outlast the headlines. Dignity is not requested, it is lived, and in that truth, the world outside kept moving, a little more aware than it was the day before. By noon, the video had spread across every major platform. Millions of people watched as the scene replayed. The manager's hand, the splash of water, the silent composure of the woman he thought was powerless. Captions called it the horizon lesson. News anchors debated policy. Influencers preached empathy. And ordinary people argued in comment threads about respect, race, and restraint. Inside the Carter Enterprises boardroom, the mood was measured but tense. The room, all glass and chrome, overlooked the city skyline that now carried whispers of their name. Maya sat at one end of the long oak table, her posture calm, her expression unreadable. Miss Carter stood near the window, phone in hand, scrolling through the endless cycle of coverage. "Every network wants an interview," he said. "Some want to turn it into a documentary." Maya shook her head. "No cameras, no statements. The story already spoke for itself." He looked at her for a long moment. "You sure?" She nodded. "If we start explaining, we turn it into entertainment. What happened was not a show, it was truth, and truth does not need editing." Silence settled again, filled only by the low hum of the city below. Across the table, a communications director cleared her throat gently. "Ma'am, the public response is overwhelmingly supportive. Guests are booking out of solidarity. Others are asking how they can work for you." Maya smiled faintly. Then maybe pain finally taught something. Another executive leaned forward. "Do you want us to release the footage from security? It shows the full incident." She paused, then answered slowly. "Yes, but do not crop it. Do not add music. Let people hear every word he said, and every second I stayed silent. Let them understand that calm does not mean weak." Mr. Carter placed his phone down, his eyes softening. "You turned humiliation into a mirror. Now the world is forced to look at itself." Maya's voice grew quieter. For years, I walked into rooms that were mine and was treated like a stranger. Yesterday was not the first time. It was just the first time the world watched. Her words hung heavy in the room. The executives lowered their eyes, not in pity, but in realization. They were witnessing more than a public relations meeting. They were witnessing reckoning with history. Outside, reporters gathered near the building entrance. Cameras clicked, flashes bounced off black cars, microphones reached toward the revolving doors. Yet Maya and her husband did not step out to meet them. They stayed inside, watching from the glass walls of the boardroom. She turned to him. "Do you think it will change anything?" He answered without hesitation. "It already has. Someone out there will think twice before deciding who deserves to belong." She exhaled, looking down at her reflection in the polished table. "Then it was worth it." In that quiet moment, the sunlight shifted, sliding across her face, illuminating the strength that had always been there, unapologetic, unbroken, undeniable. Outside, the city moved on. But in offices, in lobbies, in restaurants and schools, conversations began. And for the first time in a long time, people were not just speaking about injustice. They were listening. The following day, the news cycle had not slowed. Every headline carried her face. Every network replayed that moment under brighter lights and heavier words. Commentators debated whether the world had finally seen progress or only another performance of it. But Maya did not watch any of it. She was already back at work. Her office overlooked the river that split the city in two. The glass walls framed her like a portrait of control. She sat behind her desk, signing off on renovation plans for a new Horizon Grand property in Atlanta. To anyone else, it looked like routine. But to Maya, every signature felt symbolic, a continuation of everything she had fought for in silence. Mr. Carter entered, his tone half curious, half proud. "You really came in early," he said. "I did not want to give the world the satisfaction of seeing me hide," she replied. "They can discuss what happened. I will build what happens next." He leaned on the edge of her desk, studying her. "They are calling you a symbol now." Maya gave a quiet laugh. "Symbols fade, systems stay. That is what I want to fix." He nodded, knowing better than to interrupt when she spoke like that, measured, unhurried, yet burning with purpose. "We already issued the new training mandate across all divisions. Zero tolerance for discriminatory conduct. Every employee signs it by the end of the week." She looked up from her papers. "Good. But do not call it training. Call it reflection. Training teaches compliance. Reflection teaches conscience." And their eyes met for a moment, hers fierce, his steady. "You always find a way to turn pain into policy," he said. "Pain only matters if it changes something," she replied. There was a knock at the door. The same young concierge who had defended her in the lobby stood there, holding a sealed envelope. "Ma'am, this just arrived from Seattle," she said. Maya opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter from a guest who had witnessed the entire incident. "You did not raise your voice," it read. "But you raised the standard for what it means to belong. My daughter watched that video and said, 'That is who I want to be.' Thank you for showing her what grace looks like under fire." Maya read the words twice, then folded the letter neatly. "People are paying attention," she murmured. Mr. Carter smiled. "The right people are." She looked out the window, her reflection overlapping the skyline. "I do not want them to remember the water," she said. "I want them to remember the silence after it. That was where everything changed." He nodded. "That silence has a name now. It is called dignity." For a moment, the city outside seemed to pause, the hum of traffic, the ripples on the river, the world itself holding its breath. Maya closed the folder of blueprints, stood, and straightened her blazer. "Let them talk," she said quietly. "I will keep building." And with that, she walked toward the glass doors of her office, her reflection moving beside her, strong, unbothered, and unbreakable. The world had seen her soaked, but now it would see her standing. That evening, the city shimmered in the glow of its own reflection. Billboards flashed her face across downtown, each one captioned with words she never asked for: "Grace under fire," "The woman who changed the room," "Horizon's heart." Maya watched one of them through the tinted window of the car as it pulled to a stop outside a community center. "I still cannot get used to that," she said softly. Mr. Carter smiled. "Public memory has a short attention span, but this one might last." She turned to him. Then let us make it worth remembering. Inside the center, a crowd had gathered employees, students, small business owners, and a few local reporters who had been told this was not a press event, it was a conversation. On stage, there were no logos, no polished backdrops, just two chairs and a single microphone resting between them. When Maya stepped forward, the room quieted instantly. Her presence carried no theatrics, only composure. "I am not here to relive what happened," she began. "You have all seen that video. You know how it ended. I am here to talk about how it begins, how prejudice still hides behind policies, how silence protects the wrong people, and how calm can still be power." Every word was measured, paced with intention. The young concierge from the hotel sat near the front, her eyes bright with pride. "Yesterday was not about a hotel," Maya continued. "It was about a pattern. Every time someone decides who belongs before they listen, the world gets smaller, and I am tired of shrinking to fit inside other people's comfort." Applause erupted, not loud but sincere, rising like a wave. She waited until it faded. "I did not shout, because I have shouted before and nothing changed. But silence, when used right, can make people hear what yelling never will." Mr. Carter watched from the side of the room, his hand resting against his chin. She was not giving a speech, she was giving a mirror. A student stood up and asked, "How did you stay calm when he threw the water?" Maya smiled gently. "Because I have spent years learning to breathe through disrespect. I do not need to match hate to defeat it." The audience grew still again. Every person in that room could feel the weight of what she said, lessons born from scars, not slogans. She looked around slowly. "One day, someone like him will meet someone like me again. I hope by then the ending will not need to be a firing, it will just be understanding." When she stepped off the stage, the crowd rose. No cameras flashed, no microphones chased her down the aisle. People simply stood, as if the only appropriate response to dignity was to mirror it. Outside, as she and her husband walked toward their car, he glanced at her with quiet admiration. "You know," he said, "you just rewrote what power looks like." Maya looked up at the night sky, where the city lights blurred into soft gold. "No," she replied. "I just reminded them who it has always belonged to." And as they drove away, the billboard behind them faded into darkness, but the message stayed lit in the hearts of everyone who had seen her stand and never bow. The next morning, the city woke up to a different rhythm. News anchors spoke less about the scandal and more about the change it had sparked. Hotels across the country began revising their policies, referencing the Horizon Standard. Editorials called it a turning point. Social media had already moved from outrage to reflection, filled with one line repeated again and again: "Justice does not need to shout, it just stands." At the Horizon headquarters, sunlight flooded the open atrium. Employees gathered around the large digital board that displayed the new corporate code of ethics. It was simple, only 7 words long: "Every guest deserves respect. No exceptions, ever." Maya and Mr. Carter watched from the balcony above as the staff read it in silence. No one clapped. No one needed to. The moment spoke for itself. Maya leaned against the glass railing, her reflection merging with the city skyline behind her. "It feels heavier when it is real," she said softly. Mr. Carter nodded. Real things always do. They walked through the building together, passing offices where conversations had already changed. People who once avoided difficult topics now discussed them openly. Diversity meetings were no longer side projects, they were part of the main agenda. The shift was not loud, but it was alive. Later that afternoon, Maya received a call from a university dean in Atlanta. "Mrs. Carter," the voice said, "we would like to name our new leadership scholarship after you. It is for students who choose integrity, when silence would be easier." Maya paused. "That is kind," she replied. "But if you do, promise me one thing: make it for those who have been told they do not belong. Let them know they do." The dean agreed without hesitation. When she hung up, she found her husband standing by the window, reading messages pouring in from across the world. "Letters from Paris, Nairobi, Toronto," he said. "They all say the same thing: thank you for showing strength without shouting." Maya smiled faintly. Maybe the world is finally learning the language of calm. He placed his arm around her shoulders. "And you are the one who taught it." Downstairs, the young concierge was now leading a small orientation group of new employees. Her voice carried a quiet confidence as she explained the new code of conduct. Maya watched her for a moment, pride flickering in her eyes. The cycle of change had begun, not through command, but through example. As evening fell, they stood once more in the hotel lobby, where it all began. The same chandeliers glimmered overhead, but everything felt different, warmer, truer, earned. Guests passed by, unaware that this was once the site of a public humiliation turned into a living lesson. Maya looked around and said softly, "It is strange how peace can echo louder than chaos." Her husband replied, "Because peace is what remains after the shouting ends." She smiled. "Then let it stay." And in that still, golden hour light, surrounded by calm and consequence, it did. Evening arrived like a soft closing curtain, wrapping the city in gold and blue. The hotel lobby glowed with quiet life, guests checking in, laughter near the cafe, the soft clink of glasses. It was the same place, but it breathed differently now. Respect had become its new sound. Maya and Mr. Carter walked through the lobby unnoticed at first, blending into the hum of normalcy. A young employee caught sight of them and froze for a second, then straightened his posture, smoothing his uniform. The staff's quiet reverence was not about fear anymore. It was about knowing who had taught them what grace looks like when it refuses to bow. Near the front desk, the new manager approached nervously. "Mrs. Carter, Mr. Carter," he began, "we have implemented every new policy, and there is something else. The team wanted to show you something." He gestured toward a framed plaque mounted on the marble wall. Etched in gold letters were the words, "The Horizon Promise. No guest will ever be made to feel small." Beneath it, in smaller script, was Maya's quote from the community center. "Calm is not weakness. It is the highest form of control." For a long moment she said nothing. Her fingertips brushed the metal surface, cool against her skin. "It is beautiful," she said finally. "But remember, this is not decoration. It is a responsibility." "Yes, ma'am," the manager said, his voice steady. "Mr." Carter placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. "You changed more than this building," he whispered. "You changed the air people breathe when they walk in." A guest standing nearby recognized them and hesitated before approaching. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I was here that day. I saw what happened. I just wanted to thank you for showing all of us what real dignity looks like." Maya smiled, warm but grounded. "You do not have to thank me," she said. "Just promise to carry it forward. The next time you see someone being treated less than human, speak up. That is how the world changes." The woman nodded, her eyes glistening. "I will." As the guest walked away, Maya turned toward her husband. "That is the real reward," she said quietly. "Not the praise, not the press. Just the reminder that someone was watching and learned." He looked at her, his voice soft. "And they will keep learning. You gave them something that does not fade." "Oh." From the mezzanine above, the young concierge watched the exchange, her expression proud and grateful. It was as if every person in that space now carried a small piece of the lesson Maya had lived. The couple moved toward the exit, the marble floor gleaming beneath their steps. The city lights stretched beyond the glass doors, alive and infinite. Maya paused for a final glance at the lobby, the same place where she had once stood drenched and humiliated, now transformed into a temple of respect. "This," she said, "is what justice looks like when it decides to stay." And with that, they stepped into the night calm, certain, and untouchable. The city was quiet that night. The streets shimmered with rainlight, reflections stretching long across the pavement. From the top floor of the Horizon Grand, the skyline looked endless, each building glowing with its own pulse, each window a story in progress. Inside the penthouse, Maya stood by the glass, her reflection doubled against the view. Behind her, soft jazz played from a record spinning slowly. Mr. Carter poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to her. "It has been a long week," he said. She smiled faintly. A long week that felt like a lifetime. End of 20. They stood together in silence, watching the city move below them. Cars flowed like veins of light through downtown. Somewhere down there, the lobby that once held cruelty now held calm. It was strange how a single act could rewrite the spirit of a place. Maya turned to him. "Do you ever think about how close we were to letting that moment pass? If I had shouted, if I had fought back in anger, it would have become just another argument caught on video. He nodded slowly. Instead, you turned it into a lesson that no one could forget. She exhaled, her breath fogging the glass for a moment. I did not want revenge. I just wanted it to mean something, to show that you can be drenched in humiliation and still stand taller than those who tried to drown you. He looked at her with quiet admiration. You did more than stand. You made the world see what standing looks like. She reached for his hand. Then let us keep doing it. Every time they build a wall, we build higher ground. The record crackled gently as rain tapped against the windows. The city outside glistened like a living testament, proof that progress is not loud, it is steady. After a while, Maya walked to her desk and opened her journal. On a blank page, she wrote a single line. Justice does not need to shout. It simply arrives and stays. She closed the book, her handwriting still drying, and set it on the shelf beside photographs of her younger self, each picture a reminder of how far she had come and how many times she had been told she did not belong. Tomorrow, she said, turning back to him, we start the new campaign, one focused on education, leadership, and fairness in hiring. I want the next generation to learn this before the world tries to unteach it. He raised his glass. To the next generation, he said. To every person who learns to stand without needing to shout. Maya clinked her glass against his. The sound was soft but certain, a single note of closure. Outside, thunder rolled faintly across the horizon, not as a threat, but as applause from a distant sky. The city lights flickered once, then steadied. And in that moment, two silhouettes standing against the night, the story of humiliation, revelation, and justice found its quiet ending. Because sometimes, the loudest thing in the world is a woman who chooses to remain still and refuses to bow.